Hey, welcome back to another Finance Friday. This is Jerry Feta, founder and CEO of Wealth Dynamics, coming to you with a live financial training this weekend. So these Finance Fridays, I want to share with you because I've been doing these for a long time. The purpose of these is to increase the amount of financial understanding that's out there, right? And so, if any of you that are watching or not, if you've ever had this moment where you felt like finances were overwhelming or confusing or hard to understand, right? The truth is it comes down to a couple of things, math and vocabulary, right? Math and vocabulary. So if you can understand the math and you can look up the words and you can understand the vocabulary, finances can then become very easy, right? And so part of my purpose when I do these is to create a greater level of financial competency. But I want people who understand money. I want to help people really get their knowledge up so they can start taking control of creating wealthier lives, right? And doing that now, not when you're 60, not when you're 65. Okay. And the result of that is, you end up improving quality of life for yourself, for your loved ones, for the world around you, and really creating a freer world as a result and as a ripple effect, right? Now, I've been doing these last couple of weeks, a course on the blueprint and really diving into what I call the laws of wealth, right? The laws of wealth. And it's the concept that there's a lot of financial information out there, right? And we could spend probably years and years and years learning all the ins and outs of every last little detail. But the reality is most of those financial pieces of knowledge are usually part of a bigger law, right? And I've used the example of gravity. I'm going to use that again just really quickly, but we know what gravity is. We know that that's a natural law. We know that that's something that will happen. So because of that, we don't need to go through and study every last piece of information on what if this falls? What if that falls? What if you jump? What if this? We already know it's going to fall. We already know the body's going to go down. Why? Because we know there's a law of gravity. We can use the more senior law to think through and conclude all the other details. Okay. The same exists with finances, right? And so the last couple of weeks, we've gone over a couple different laws of wealth. I want to cover a few more tonight, really with the intention of allowing you to think for yourself financially, right? Allowing you to think for yourself financially. And I think that that's such an important thing because what happens is we don't know. Finances aren't something we naturally learn. They were created. They're what's called arbitrary. Somebody made them up. Okay. So we have a thing that somebody made up. Then we never learn it. We go through our entire schooling and we never learn about finances. Okay, I want you to think about how crazy this is and how big of a failure this is on behalf of the education system. The one thing that every student is going to need. Okay, you can't say that about many subjects, but the one thing that, like, for sure, Sally's going to need to know about money. Johnny's going to need to know about money. Little Billy's going to need to know about money. Every single person will have that in common. It's the one thing we don't teach mandatory. And it's the one thing that when we do teach it, we don't make sure it's true, right? A lot of it's just marketing dressed up by financial institutions to get us to buy more of their products and services. So what I want to teach you tonight are the laws of wealth. Okay, now my goal here is if you're watching this, you're new, you've not seen my stuff before. I hope that this gives you a new outlook on finances, and I hope it encourages you to continue the journey because it doesn't just start and end with a webinar. There's only so much I'm going to teach you in 30, 45 minutes tonight, right? If you're a client, same thing. If you're already a client or a member, I hope that this is something that takes you one step further. Now, I want to go over what the laws of wealth are going to be that we're going to cover tonight. So we've talked about the 40% rule before. And I want to go over what that means and really break that down because I feel like this is one that if you can master just this, right? If you can master just this, this is going to help you build wealth faster than anything else, right? And let me just find the graph that I want to show you guys really quick. This is a graph that will illustrate this law of wealth really well that I'll share. But I was on a podcast today and the host was asking me, he's like, Jerry, how do we beat inflation? Right? If you're the average everyday person, how do you beat inflation? Cost of living going up, right? And he's like, how do we earn more? Let's say inflation is 5% or 6%. How do we earn more than that on our investments? And what I told him was, I said, that's the wrong way of thinking. Okay, beating inflation isn't done with your investments, right? The higher you go for returns on your investments, the more risk you're adding. Risk means chance for loss. If I'm trying to beat inflation, I don't want increased loss in addition to inflation. Okay, so I beat inflation through this law of wealth. I'm going to go ahead and put this one on the whiteboard for you guys. All right, so check this one out. This is one of the most important laws of wealth. Always pay yourself first. Start with what you can. Work toward 40% savings rate. All right, now let's define a couple of terms. What do I mean when I say pay yourself first? For those of you that don't know, and some of you may be watching and you're like, well, everyone knows what pay yourself first means. Nuh-uh, I've talked to adults that don't. I asked an entrepreneur about a month ago, do you pay yourself first? And she said, yeah, I'm on W-2. Okay, that's not what I mean when I say pay yourself first. Pay yourself first means that when you get money, you get income, it rolls into your personal household. You take that income and you put it into your future first. You put it into a wealth building account first. Before any bills come out, before you pay the rent, the mortgage, the groceries, the car, none of that stuff, you pay yourself first, right? So can you just, I have a note here. Nothing is showing up on the whiteboard. Okay, let me refresh the whiteboard here. Let me just click this open one more time. Hopefully you guys can see that better. But guys, paying yourself first means you are saving money as a forced savings plan, as an expense first, right? And I want you to think about this. Like if you were, really thinking about where the money goes, for the average person, you get paid, what happens? Well, your taxes come out. So the IRS gets paid first. Then after that, what happens? The money goes into your 401k plan. Wall Street gets paid first. Then what happens? The rest of your deposit goes into a bank account. So then the bank gets paid first. Then you pay all your other bills. And most people, they like, oh, I save what's left over. In other words, you pay yourself last. You need to pay yourself first. This is such an important one. And this is the one that most people overlook. Most people are like, oh, everyone knows that. And it's one of those things that everyone knows, but nobody does. Everyone knows you should eat healthy. Nobody does that. Everyone knows you should go to the gym. Nobody does that. If you're in sales, everyone knows you should prospect and make cold calls. Nobody does that. All of the things that everyone knows typically are the things that nobody does. You have to pay yourself first, right? So how do you do this? You actually do this on a percentage basis. Okay, I want you to look at right now, if I was to pay myself first, how much money per month would that be in dollars, right? So let's say it's $300 a month or $500 a month. Okay, that's where I started. Okay, now I do a whole lot more than that. I save 40% of my gross income, but I didn't start there. So I started with what I could, and I started with about $500 a month. So I said, okay, I'm gonna save $500 a month because that's what I can afford. And I divided that by my income to figure out what percentage that represented. What percentage of my pre-tax income did $500 represent? Okay, so if I earn, let's say, $100,000 a year, right? And I'm saving $500 a month. Okay, that's 6,000. That's about 6% of my income. So I know right now I can save 6% of my income. So I set that as the percentage. Of every dollar that comes in, I will save 6% of it. I will pay myself first with that. Okay, now I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to increase my income so that the 6% can be off of a larger number. And I'm going to reduce my expenses down. I'm going to do things like get rid of debt. I'm going to do things like lower my bills. I'm going to do things like cut my taxes down so that I've got more money that I can save, so that I've got more money that I can invest. See what I mean? So you can go with the income is going higher, therefore 6% represents a bigger number. And you can go for, let's try and make 6% into 8 or 10 or 12 or 15. And you keep whittling up and up and up and up and up until you're able to save 40% of your income. Okay, now here is the thing that I want to stress, because we're in an election season. You're going to hear a lot of people talking about the evil wealthy people, right? Those rich 1%ers. We should tax them more and this and that and redistribute it all. The people who are saying that are 1%ers. I want you to check their net worths out. You'll see that they're 1%ers themselves. Okay, you will never build wealth if you disagree with the thing you're trying to become. So you can't be like, those bastards, those 1%ers, and then like, oh, also I want to be one of them, right? You can't do both of those. If you want to be one, you need to like them. You need to have some affinity and some agreement for those people, right? All that aside, I want to show you guys a graph. This graph single-handedly changed my life, right? Because at the time, I was a financial advisor, meaning I was telling people, invest in the market. I was telling people, put money in your retirement account, right? This is a graph here, and you guys should be able to see this now. This is a graph here that shows from 1913 to 2012. Okay, so that's about 100 years. Little more, a little bit less. It's about 100 years. Let me know if you guys can see the graph here in the comments. Good. You guys can see it. These are different wealth classes. It's showing savings rate by wealth class. Okay, decennial averages. So decennial meaning every 10 years, 10-year averages. Okay, so you're seeing, from 1913 to 1919, that's about 10 years. From 1920 to 1929, that's 10 years. 30 to 39, 10 years. These are all 10-year periods here. Okay, what I want to point out is I want to point out the different wealth classes here, right? This is the top 1%. This is the next top 10 to 1%, so that's a 9% spread. This is the bottom 90%. This here represents their savings rate. Their savings rate. Let me make that a little cleaner for you guys. Percentage of income saved. Okay? Where are the top 1% at consistently? This is 40. Right? You can see 1913 to 1919, they're saving about 40% of their income. 1920 to 1929, they're saving about 30% of their income. 1940 to 1949, they're saving 40%. 1950 to 1959, they're saving 30%. Then they go back up to 40 and they kind of hang out at 40 for a while. Then they drop down to about 20 something and then they pop right back up to 40. And they're doing that long range over about 100 years. Okay. Couple of things I want to point out. First, let's focus on the tops. Let's forget the bottom of the graph. Let's forget the troughs here. Let's focus on the peaks. Okay. So I don't want you guys thinking yet about 1939. I don't want you guys thinking yet about 1950 or the 1990s or the mid 2000s. I just want to focus on these top peaks here. Okay. That is called discipline. Right? We can hate on the top 1% all we want. It's not going to get us there, and it's not going to move them out of the top 1%. This is a classic scenario, is if you can't beat them, join them. Okay? They are saving 30 to 40% of their pre-tax income. 30 to 40%. Right? So when you think about this, 30 to 40% over 100 years, I want you to do the math. What is 30 to 40% of your income right now? Go ahead and use your calculator. If you're making $10,000 a month, that's $4,000 a month you need to be saving. $4,000 a month. Now you might be like, Jerry, that's impossible. Okay, is it though? Is it really impossible? Number one, what if you were to increase your income? That's not impossible to do. People increase their income all the time. Guys, they literally print the money. It's digits on a screen. There's no shortage of it. There's so much out there. It's just, do I know how to go get it? If I don't know how to go get it, okay, yeah, I'm going to struggle. But if I learn how to get it, I learn how to develop a skill and communicate and all the stuff I talked about last week on my course about increasing income, then it's not a problem for me to go out and increase my income. Okay. Now, the other thing is, what about my cost of living? How much am I paying in taxes? How much am I spending to live where I live? Right? And is that inhibiting my financial freedom? Okay. Because if it is, it's something that, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, my mortgage or my rent is too expensive. I might need to cut this down a bit, right? This might need to be something that I get rid of, or I move, or you know what I mean? So I need to look at these things and figure out, how do I increase my savings rate? Okay. The other statistic I want to give you, 80% of millionaires are first generation. So we also can't look at this and be like, oh, these guys are, trust fund babies and this and that. No, most of them actually made their way there. Andrew Carnegie, America's first billionaire, wealthiest man in American history, first generation immigrant. His parents were not wealthy. They were dirt poor. Same thing with Rockefeller. Same thing with Vanderbilt. Same thing with, the only one that really in this group that wasn't was maybe JP Morgan. right? But most of these guys were first generation. They just worked. They understood I have to increase the income. I've got to maximize my savings. Okay. So I want you to think about like, am I doing what needs to happen from a causative standpoint on the savings rate to be in the top 1%? Okay, because the net worth, 1% net worth is going to come much later. 1% income is going to come much later, if it even comes for most people. Okay, but everyone has the opportunity to be in the top 1% of saving. You can join the top 1% as easy as saving 40% of your income, and then you're in the 1%. You're officially there with your saving, and then that means you're going to be soon there with your investing. And then soon you're going to be there with your passive income, and you'll actually experience financial freedom. Okay, so if you did nothing else that I teach, and you literally just did this, that's all. All you did was save 40% of your income and just keep doing that until you can invest for passive, you would become financially independent if you did nothing else. Now, there are ways to enhance it and get there, in a better fashion and create longevity and all of this kind of stuff. That's the other things we can add, but this is the main behavior, guys. So when I learned this, I was probably 23, 24 years old. Okay, I was saving, a couple $100 a month. Didn't know about the sacred account yet. Didn't know about any of this stuff yet. I was still a financial advisor. And I remember seeing this and having that thought of, if I could just do that, if all else fails, if I could just do that one thing of saving 40% of my income, I see how I could make it. Okay, now here's the other thing I want to point out on this. You guys are going to see some dips here, right? So here's the fine print. It says the rich save more as a fraction of their income, except in the 1930s when there was a large dis-saving through corporations. The average private saving rate has been 9.8% over 1913 to 2013. So saving happened through corporations is what they're saying, right? So a large dis-savings rate. Let's actually clear that word up because I don't think most people understand dis-savings rate. So let's talk about what that means. And I'm going to teach you guys this. If you go to Google and you type in dis-savings rate, definition, Investopedia pops up, and right there you can clear up what does the word dis-saving mean. Right? I'll even share my screen on this so you guys can see what I do. I use Investopedia all the time. Right? What did I say? It's all about what? Numbers, just the mathematics and the vocabulary. So when I read a word like dis-savings, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? You go on Investopedia and you figure it out. So let's go over what dis-savings is. Dis-saving is spending money beyond one's available income. This may be accomplished by tapping into a savings account, taking cash advances on a credit card, or borrowing against future income via a payday loan. Understanding dis-saving. So this is a fancy word for you're spending money you don't have, right? Dis-saving is the opposite of saving. It means one is trying to spend above one's income, dipping into savings. So let's talk about that now in response to what we just saw here. Let's pull the graph back up. Okay, the rich save more as a fraction of their income, except in the 1930s when there is a large dis-saving through corporations. So it's saying that they are spending money on corporations. They're spending money on corporations. So check this out. What happened during this time period? What are we knowing is going on here in history in the United States of America? This was the Great Depression, right? So this is not saying net worth. This is not saying income. This is saying savings rate. Savings rate. They're no longer saving. They're dipping into their savings. This is actually below zero, which means that they were actually borrowing money. They were dipping into their savings and they were borrowing money. Why would they do that? Because during the Great Depression, real estate went on sale, businesses went on sale, the stock market went on sale, employees went on sale. So if you've been stacking up income, saving 40% of it, all of a sudden you have this bust down here, you can go in and take advantage of all the sales, can't you? You're able to do the classic, we all know, buy low, sell high, right? You can go in here and you're buying low. This is why their savings rates dropped, because they're buying low. They'd been saving 30 and 40%. The sale happened. The economy tanked. They went in and bought everything. Right? I think there was a stat that I saw in 2020, and it was like a billionaire a day was created in 2020. A billionaire a day. right? Think about that. That's an insane statistic. Now, you don't just accidentally have that happen. You have to prepare. You've got to save. Now, let's talk about the other parts of the graph here. 1950, same thing. You drop from 30 down to 40. That was another recession. There was a little tiny recession here. We had a mortgage crisis and a tech bubble. We had another mortgage crisis here at the end of 2009. All of the times they're dipping are periods of time when the economy wasn't doing well. They're reducing their saving, they're dipping into it, they're going into their investments, they're buying things. And you know that because as soon as it's done, look at the affluence on that graph. All-time high savings rate. Why? Because the assets they bought are throwing off more income. They're growing because of the sale they just bought in on. Okay, there's something to be said for saving to, have financial security, saving to buy a house, saving to invest. And then there's also just saving for having opportunity. Like if opportunity comes up and you don't have money for it, you lose out. And guys, so many of us, we miss out on these opportunities. For the wealthy become calamities and emergencies for us, because when we do have money, we spend it on stuff that doesn't move the needle. We spend it on things that it doesn't increase our net worth. It doesn't increase our wealth. So when then the economy tanks and we have, hard times come up, they become hard times because we were spending our money during the good times. Okay. Now, same thing with this middle group, top 10 to 1%. Let's check these guys out. Okay. Top 10 to 1%. They were saving about 30. They also dipped here. But I want you to see here in the Great Depression, they tried to save their way out of it. Right? Everything's going on sale. And instead of taking advantage of it, they were like, oh no, we need to pinch and we need to, really scrimp and everything and try and save our way out of this. And look what happens. They did the opposite. They never quite recovered. The wealthy, the top 1%, they had an all-time high. These guys, they never got higher than they were here. It's a continually downward trend. Okay. Same thing here is they pop back up. Another recession happens. They try and keep it level. The wealthy invest. Okay. Because they tried to keep it level, it fell even farther. So when the wealthy came up, you can see the divergence occur right here. They never recovered from this. They never recovered. You can see it's a continual downward slope. So what does this tell you? This tells you when everyone around you is living it up, you should be economizing. You should be saving more. So when you see your friends buying houses and buying cars and traveling, they're probably putting it on credit cards. They're probably doing dis-saving, the opposite of saving, which is a funny word, right? They're just borrowing and spending. They're not saving. Do the opposite. You should be saving more. When I see, more luxury cars on the street, I'm like, all right, I'm going to start cutting some expenses. I'm going to start increasing my income. I want to save more so I can really do the opposite of what all these guys are doing. Right? And this means that you're going to be counter to most people. Right? But you can see the difference here. These guys became much worse off because they didn't do the same thing the wealthy did. Okay, the wealthy maintain this. And then I want you to see the bottom 90%. This is most Americans. They're really not doing much. They're not even saving 10% of their incomes on average. One of the highest US savings rates was during COVID. During the pandemic in 2020, that was one of the highest savings rates in the United States of America ever. Why? Because people were afraid. This is what fear looks like. We're going through uncertainty. Fear looks like during the uncertainty, I better save more money rather than I'm going to go buy the opportunities now. Right? If you did things right going into it and you followed this law of wealth of you're paying yourself first and you're starting with what you can and you're working up to 40%, you're not going to have this fear and insecurity when the economy gets tough. Right? You're going to have the ability to say, okay, good. I'm going to go buy this stuff while it's on sale. And I'm telling you that that's how you can change your life. Right now, for me, when I'm investing, because I'm saving 40% of my income, when I'm investing, I'm consistently doing it. I'm buying real estate, I'm buying gold and silver, I'm buying, investments and different things all throughout. And that increases my income. And because I'm continuing to save 40% even off of the increased income, when an economy does get soft, or we do have a recession, or we do go into a depression, or whatever it might be, I can say, hey, I've got all this income I can go put to work right now. I don't need to try and pull back. I don't need to try and economize, right? So this 40% saving thing is huge. Okay. And the other thing that I want to talk about on this is that paying yourself first creates what's called income demand. Income demand. So one of the things that I do when I want to earn more income is, and I learned this when I was a kid, right? So my sister owned a ranch. She still does up in Alaska. And when I was, 10, 11, 12 years old, during the summers, we used to go up there and we used to pull all the sticks out of the dirt. Okay, because they had to plant. So we'd have to get all the big sticks, all the big rocks, pull it out of the dirt, throw it in the back of the truck, right? And that would make the land more fertile so you could actually plant. If you got a bunch of sticks and rocks and weeds and things in there, you're not going to plant very well. So we had 40 acres. 40 acres. That's like several football fields. I want you to think about that's huge, right? And so we would go through every day and we would just do rows up and down and up and down. We pull out all the rocks, we pull out all the sticks, right? I learned that I could go faster if I tied a rope from my waist to the back of the truck. And then the person driving the truck, they would run basically a little quicker than I could run. They would hit the gas and speed the truck up a little faster than I could go. And because I was tied to it, it forced me to move faster, right? So I learned this when I was like 10 years old, okay? The same is true for your finances. If you commit yourself to a forced savings plan, that's a little more than you're comfortable with, puts you a little over the edge. What does that do? It forces you to increase your income, right? It would be no different than you bit off too much, more than you could chew on a house payment. You got this big mortgage and you're trying to keep up with it. And now you've got to earn more income because that mortgage next month is going to be there and you better have the income to produce. That's going to push you into a higher level of production. Okay, same reason, if you look at people who live in high cost of living areas or high tax areas, their incomes are typically higher. Why? Because there's income necessity. California taxes, for example, makes you earn more income. You have to, otherwise you're going to be poor, right? So what if it wasn't a car payment or a mortgage or a tax bill? What if the bill was your saving? It was your savings every single month and you treated that like a bill. And that was the bill you paid before any other bill. And it was a little more than you were comfortable with. And it kept you on your toes. That's called income necessity or income demand. That is one of the secrets that I use. So when I see myself getting lazy, I'll do something like I'll take most of my cash, throw it into real estate and get rid of it so I'm broke and open up another sacred account. Not even kidding you guys. That's one of the strategies. When I'm at a plateau, like, cool, I'm going to grab as much of my liquidity as I possibly can. I'm going to throw that into an investment so that it's not there. I don't have comfort. I don't feel like, oh, I can just kick my feet up and relax. It's like, no, I'm broke right now. Like I'm going to be in danger if I don't do something. Now, the good news is I'm in danger because I made a smart decision. I put it in real estate. The bad news is for me and my comfort, I need to go work harder. Now, if I open up another sacred account on top of that, I'm broke and I have another payment that I need to worry about. And so it forces me into higher production. Okay, so I will do that on purpose because that pushes me in the right direction. I don't know why. Human nature, we have a tendency to want comfort. We have a tendency to want to be lazy. And I have just learned that in order to save 40% of my income, I need to operate on that basis. Right? So guys, that's what I wanted to share was this law of wealth tonight. I want to pull it up one more time on the whiteboard, just to go over it one last time. Again, here it is. Always pay yourself first. Start with what you can. Work toward 40% savings rate. And here's the thing. Like, you don't need to start at 40. So I don't want you to go into the mode of like, because I can't save 40, I won't do anything. It's kind of like, because I can't do an hour workout like I planned, I'm just not going to go to the gym, right? You don't want this all or nothing mindset. 10 minutes at the gym is better than none. $100 a month is better than zero. See what I mean? So I want you to focus on what can you do and increase it gradually, right? Now, where you put it is a different conversation. That's the sacred account, right? Don't put it in a bank. Don't put it in Wall Street. Like, put it somewhere where you can control it. You can access it. You can have uninterrupted compounding interest. Okay. Now, the final thing I want to share with you guys, if you're watching this and you've not grabbed a copy of my book yet, okay, if you watched this entire thing and you're like, this made sense, this was helpful, what I would like to do is I want to give you a gift. I want to give you a free copy of my book. So I'm going to share my screen here. And if you don't have this, if you're watching, live or on the replay, you can scan the QR code and you can grab a free copy of my book, The Blueprint to Financial Freedom, or you can go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo. That's going to give you a whole lot more. Like everything we talked about tonight is going to be in there plus some, right? And this really is, like it says on the cover, it's a step-by-step guide toward achieving passive income that exceeds your savings, expenses, and taxes. And let's add generosity to that as well, because it's just as important. That is something you can do. So scan the QR code, get the book. And if you guys want to tune back in, I'm going to be back again next Friday night, same time, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great night.